In this video, we're going to take the penguin that we've been working with and we're going to apply a fairly simple armature to him and do a little basic animation. So to start off, you'll take your penguin mesh, and you can find this in the resources in the video description. So I like to start and create my armatures just kind of from the side. So if you hit 3 on your number pad, or if you don't have a number pad, you can always go up to View and Viewport, and then you can choose these from the list. So we're looking at the right orthographic view, so right here, right orthographic. And you may know if you have the number pad, if you hit 5, then it switches between perspective and orthographic. So if you ever get caught in a mode where you're not seeing this grid, then switch into orthographic. And I think you can do that from here too, maybe. I think if you just do right or any of these, it should go into orthographic. So we're going to create a new armature. Shift A will pull up the add menu, and we're going to do an armature right here. Okay, so the first thing that we'll notice right here is that the bone is hidden inside of this penguin. So it's pretty easy to fix that. If we come over here to the right, then we can go to this little running man symbol here, this object data. And if you go to viewport display, you can display it as in front. And so that'll help. And then axes, I like to turn this on too, just to see the orientation of the bone, because sometimes things can get a little messed up, and it's helpful to make sure that Z is generally pointed up when you want that out of your armature. So the first step then is to switch into edit mode. So I'm going to hit tab on my keyboard to switch into edit mode. And then I'm going to move this down so that it is so that Z is pointing up. I don't really know exactly if this is super important. I'm going to hit G and hold down the control key so it kind of locks onto things, and then just click like that. But I did a tutorial once, and I think it was from Level Pixel Level, which is a really great channel you should check out. And he said that it makes sense to have Z pointing up because Z is pointing up in the world. And that made sense to me, so that's what I've been doing. So now that we've got this first bone, this is going to be our root, and it's helpful to give it a name. And so right now, if we check this names thing, it'll show what this is called. We can come over into the armature, expand this. I'm going to contract that, I guess is the right word. So come over to this armature, and in here we have bone. We're going to call this root instead, and then we can start working from there. So now, remember, we're in edit mode, so we're able to create new bones from this. So what I'm going to do is switch into top view, which is 7 on the number pad, and I'm going to create a couple more bones here. So for these first bones, because I want the root to always rotate and move the entire bird, I'm going to use Shift D to duplicate. And so it's not actually coming off of the tip of this guy right here. It's actually a new kind of separate thing. So we're going to do, let's do one at the base of the leg here. And I'm going to call this maybe just leg.001. And we're going to call this, looks like it's his left leg. So _L. Okay. And then I'm going to move this by clicking on it and pressing G. And then I'm going to extrude it with E to the end of his foot here. Okay, so I'm going to call this then, it would appear that it's added this on here for me. It makes me wonder if that's a better way to do it, but I'm going to remove this and call this leg 002L. Okay, then I'm going to make sure that this here is parented to this root bone. So I'm going to click this one first, then click this one, hit Control P to parent, and I'm going to keep offset. And that'll create this dotted line in between them so that I'll show you what this does. Actually, it's important. Let's select both of these, Shift to, and then click to select the second one. Hit G and then Z. We're going to kind of move it up like this. And then we're going to switch into pose mode. And this should make it so that if I rotate this at all, I'm going to just kind of show you that if you rotate the root, it rotates everything. So I'm going to hit Escape to undo that. And then if I rotate this one, let's rotate around the Z axis by pressing Z, then I can rotate just this, hit Escape. If I rotate this one around the Z axis, you get the idea that these are now linked properly, and the root will move anything that's parented, even if it's not extruded from it or connected, I guess is the right word. So I'm going to come into the side view with the 3 on the number pad, and I'm going to fix this so that it looks a little bit more accurate here. I'm going to just, oops, I'm in pose mode. I need to switch back. So I'm going to switch back into edit mode. I'm going to hit G when I've clicked on this end, and then I'm going to also hit E to extrude down here for the rest of this foot. And then it helps to just look and make sure that everything's kind of hooked up correctly. But I'm middle clicking on the mouse and or clicking down and holding, and then I can rotate around this to just see if things look right. So I'm going to say that looks right. I'm not going to go for perfection on this one. I'm going to try and go for close enough. So let's go back into the top view with 7 on the number pad. And we're going to choose root again. Oops, 7. And we're going to Shift D and move this over here because we're going to start working on this wing. Okay, now Shift and middle click and drag, and you can pan. And so now I don't want this to be called root anymore. I want this to be called wing. We'll call it wing. Let's call it shoulder. Shoulder underscore L for left. And one of the nice things about having these names displayed is you don't forget to change them from their default values, because once you import this, heck, before you import this into Unity, it can be really challenging to work with these things if you're looking through this hierarchy and you can't see what they are. Like you wonder which one is left, which one is right, which one is the leg, that sort of thing. So it's really helpful to have them named. So I'm not going to make this like a multi-jointed wing or anything like that. I'm going to just make it really simple. I'm going to move this over here by clicking on it, hitting G, and kind of poking it down to the end here. And then I'm going to make sure that it's the right height. So maybe I'll do from the front here with the 1 on the number pad. I will move this up, hit G, and then I'm going to hit Z just to lock it so that it only moves up and down. I'm going to do the same thing here, G, Z, and move this here. So because I'm not doing multi-jointed, I'm going to change this from shoulder to wing instead, because we're just going to have simple wings here that can just kind of flutter up and down. And I want to point out something now that these axes kind of show you. So because we have the axes showing, let's see if I can switch into pose mode and kind of show you what happens here. When I rotate around these axes, it's going to use whatever these axes are if I'm in local space. So if you click up here, the transform orientations local, this is what Unity is going to use as part of the hierarchy. So this is helpful to think about. When we are bringing this in and using joints, if we want to rotate around the x-axis, imagine this being translated over here. I'm going to hit R to show you what rotation looks like in this pose mode, and X, and you can see that red line across the middle of the screen. That's the axis. That's the x-axis. So it's parallel to the x-axis that it's showing us. And so we know that if we want this to be our main axis, then X is what we want to work with. Now, if I wanted to do Z, then I'm going to rotate in the Z. And maybe we wanted Z to be a little further down or something like that. If we had rotated this further down because the wings were maybe at an angle, you would see that. So all in all, this is helpful for thinking about how you want things to rotate when you are working in your actual Unity scene. So I'm going to right click to cancel this. And I do want to show one other thing. So right here, this rotation here is in quaternions. That's kind of hard for us as humans to work with. I have never quite grasped how they work. It uses matrices, and it's how these 3D programs work under the covers, but it's not how we think generally, if you've had any geometry background. So we're going to switch into XYZ Euler here. And that will help to see what the rotation is for this. And if I had rotated this into the Z and I wanted to get it back, maybe I would just change this to 0. Okay, now I'm going to switch into the top view with 7 again. I'm going to create, I have to switch back into edit mode and parent this properly. So if I click on the wing, click on the root, and hit Control P to parent this, and I'm going to keep offset, and you'll see that I get that dotted line again. Now I'm going to create one more of these for the head. So I'm going to do Shift D to duplicate. I'm going to kind of put it at the base of his neck here, and I'm going to rename it. Let's collapse this. I'm going to rename this to neck. No, let's call it head. And I'm going to grab this top part and I'm going to bring it around. I'm going to hold down the Control key. Actually, I'm going to do better than that because this is not on X equals 0. So in the X axis, I was not careful and I didn't center it on 0. So I'm going to set the tail to 0. Well, let's set the tail here to 0. And then I'm going to set this to 0 as well, actually. And then I'm just going to hit G and move it in the Y axis by pressing Y. And then I can move it like this. I think this is what I want, but let's take a look. So the Z axis is now this way. The X axis is pointing up and the Y axis is pointing out. So you can see that that might be kind of weird. It's kind of the opposite of what we would want. So I'm pretty sure I can mess with the roll here and get this back to the way that I want it. Yeah, so if I set this roll to 0, then the Z is at least pointing up. The X is kind of pointing the opposite direction from the rest of the body, but that's okay with me. I think the benefits of having it pointed this direction make sense. So you can always change the roll if these axes start looking weird on you. So let's switch into the side view, and we're going to move this up by hitting G, Z, and place this here. And let's make the beak animatable. I think I'll keep this top beak from moving, and then we will take the bottom beak and allow that to move. So I'm going to actually move this with G here, and then make sure this is kind of at the right pivot point. And then I'm going to do E. And now that we've got that in place, I'm going to rename this one. And we're going to call this beak. Okay, so now we have this shape right here. I think everything should move pretty well. Oh, I did forget. Let's select this head, Shift select root, Control P, and we're going to keep the offset. So we have this entire side modeled, and if we hit A to select the entire thing, we should be able to right click on it and hit Symmetrize. And what that does is it intelligently detects that _L that we were using for the left, and it automatically mirrors it for us on the right. So that can be really helpful. It'll save you a lot of time. You won't even need to rename things. So now we've got this thing pretty well modeled, and just to test it out, let's go into pose mode and just, make sure that this sort of beak rotates correctly. So I'm going to hit RX. That looks like it'll work. RX. That should work. So yeah, these all appear to be looking pretty good. So next, we're going to have to come in here and actually attach this thing to the mesh.